Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind. Earth, sky and stars, 10,000 suns shine within us all. Give praise to the one.
Just a little general discussion about astrology. We'll delve into this whole report here. We're going to cover some huge amounts of time, tens of thousands of years, and then we're going to hone into this year. Why would we bother talking about things that are way outside of seeing your human existence? Well, the part about it that may be helpful and pertinent to you is that there are greater cycles of time that have been known in the ancient traditions all around Mother Earth that are affecting why the events are playing out now. Does that make sense? If you're not aware of these greater cycles, sometimes it can seem totally chaotic, ununderstood, random. Why is this happening? Even understanding them, you can say, well, I don't like that. Why is this happening? It's still chaotic. But there is a greater cycle unfolding. And we'll delve into this in a moment. But we are in the birth of the age of Aquarius right now. For astrology's purpose, the sign Aquarius rules astrology. And so people in the last 50 years and in the coming 50 years will naturally gravitate more to looking to cosmic star knowledge because that frequency, waveform, color, vibration is now available in the field. The past 2,000 years, it was hidden and occulted. So not only was it not present in consensus reality, the governments, the media, the average person, but it was also suppressed and also tried to present as it's false, or it's not a valid way of looking at the universe, or it's not a tool. It's shifting. No one's having to tell people anything about it anymore. They just naturally gravitate. I can't tell you in the last 6 years how many more people have just naturally gone towards astrology by their own volition and through their own investigation and inner feeling. They say, this feels right to me. It feels like it's valid. It feels like it's a tool that helps me. So this may be one of you. So we're calling 2022 the year of the portal. Dun, dun, dun. We're calling it this because the portal from the human experience is both the death canal and the birth canal. And there are energies going both ways right now. There's things dying and going to the other side, and there's things birthing and coming in. In the ancient Greek tradition, the word for this state is chaos. Chaos is, though, not how we necessarily understand it in modern Western times. Yes, it means randomized particles of energy, entropy, ununderstood. However, the ancient Greeks understood chaos as the energy before something becomes something. The void, the beginning of the Bible, in the beginning, before there was anything, before heaven and earth split, that was the chaos, through the Greek definition. It's where all creation comes from and returns to. And so we're in that swirl right now where things are going this way and they're meeting in that mystical middle point of chaos. It's like the center of a hurricane is actually the chaotic point from the Greek definition. If you're out on the sides of the arms, you get swung around. So it's come back into the middle of the creation point. So we're calling this year the year of the portal. Things are dying and birthing. You all are birth and death doulas. Well, we can't talk about astrology without talking about quantum physics. Did you know that? Astrology, from astrologers' perception, is the same as quantum physics. It's nothing different. We're looking at, I'll use Nikola Tesla's quote, if you wish to understand the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration. All of astrology is looking at energy, frequency, and vibration. And really, the essence of all science is looking at energy, frequency, and vibration. The only difference between science and spirituality for this simple example is one also includes the intuitive, non-physical, non-mental part. Non-mental doesn't mean good or bad. It just means there's things that you know that didn't come to you from the mind. You didn't learn it in school. You didn't pick up in a book. You somehow intuit it from your inner voice, from spirit, from God, from nature, from the tones of the universe. What does quantum physics mean, though, and what does it mean in the application of astrology? There's Newtonian physics, which is duality. There's gravity, there's weight, there's bad, there's good, there's sun, there's light, there's electromagnetism, there's left, there's right, there's polarity. It's not right or wrong, but that's the outer layer of the onion. You start pulling back the layers of the onion, it doesn't invalidate the first layer, but there are other layers more subtle and go to a different dimension. So quantum physics is non-dual. It's not good, bad, left, right, up, down, here, there. Another way of saying that's non-local. If that's getting a little mind-bendy, the idea of non-local is that everything exists everywhere at all times. The perception that something exists here on this date of December 5th in 2021 is a completely, I shouldn't say completely, but it's a different perception of reality. It's not wrong, but it's giving you this much of the reality. And when you expand it out to a wholeness, there's nothing, time doesn't really exist. Everything is happening now and always has been. They use a term in quantum physics, which the yogis, the shamans, the Lakota, the Mayan, the Aboriginal, the African Mother Earth traditions, the European Mother Earth traditions have been saying throughout time. It's carved in stone, it's in the pyramids. Quantum entanglement is the modern remembrance of this principle. The particular quantum entanglement is if you have two particles, two electrons, and they are on either side of the universe. What you do to one electron will affect the other. They're instantly talking and communicating beyond the speed of light. And if you want a word, because some people say there's nothing faster than the speed of light, that's what I learned in second grade physics. Well, even physics is beginning to bend that. There's things called tachyon particles that move faster than light. You can look it up, T-Y-C-H-O-N, tachyon particles. And they break all the laws of physics, and they bend time, and they bend space-time continuum, and they instantaneously talk to each other over an infinite amount of time and space. You do this already. Your imagination is a tachyon ability. You can imagine yourself at the other end of the universe, and you are there now. I know it sounds like, well, that's for kindergartners. We don't do that anymore. The age of Aquarius is about awakening to principles that bend beyond former constructs of time, space, and science. Your imagination and your mind is a tool that operates faster than the speed of light and where it can take you and what it can do. You ever had this thing where you thought of a friend and they call you on the phone? That's quantum entanglement. Does that make sense? So there's a single unified field. This is also what the yogis and shamans say. Everything is connected. Nothing is separate. This has been the delusion of the last 2,000 years of the age of Pisces. People talk about things are separate. Things are, actually the word quantum means separate, a package of something. Quantum physics talks about the packages of things and how that doesn't really exist. And if we took a Chiron photograph of you right now, Chiron is a type of photography developed by a Russian scientist, and they've used it all over the world. The CIA uses it, not that that validates it, but what are they doing with it? If you took a Chiron photography of you, your energy field goes way beyond your physical body, and it's blending with yours and yours and yours and mine and the screen. And the people at home's energy field are coming in through the computer, and they're quantum entangling with us now. You are not separate. You know this when you go sit on a bus and somebody next to you is pissed off. And they don't have to say a word, and you feel it, and you're like, I want out of their field. Does that ever happen? We all operate by quantum entanglement, whether we acknowledge it or not. We know non-linear, non-physical, non-tangible energies, and always have. And one last piece I'll throw in there, because I'm not anti-science. I actually grew up with a science background, worked in the science world. But it's both and, it's science and spirit, it's not either or. And the past 2,000 years has dropped spirit to here and elevated science to here. It is way unbalanced. And you know it's unbalanced when your things like health, emotions, and mind are anxious, stressed, out of balance. You don't feel purpose in life, you lose meaning. You're in war, conflict. Those are signs of great imbalance. Sometimes they're pointed to as signs of great technological advances. We've split the atom. We can put uranium into water. We can do all sorts of things, but are they helping us in the long term, or are they devaluing us? So it's not get rid of science, not invalidate science, it's bring the other pillar of consciousness back to equality. And what you observe, or what is observed, is changed by the observer. If we only observe science and we only observe the material world, it changes what we see. We only see that. It's like taking the lens and you start focusing in and you're like, well, because I have binoculars on that island over there and I only see one tree, therefore there's only one tree on that island. And if you put the binoculars down, you're like, whoa, there's a forest. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything? I didn't want to do that. I pressed the button that shouldn't be pressed. So, you ever heard of the particle and wave discussion? Is light a particle or a wave? Or is anything a particle or wave? Just for spiritual purposes, particle equals fate and wave equals free will. When something collapses into a particle, it's a singularity, it's one thing, and there's only one possibility for it. When it's a wave, it has infinite possibilities. There's a famous experiment, which I won't go into right now, but you can look it up if you take a little note. It's called the double slit, S-L-I-T, like a little slit, experiment. This is an experiment from the scientific world that shows what you observe changes, and when someone looks at a photon, it changes into a particle, and when you stop looking at it, it goes back to a wave. So, to bend your mind, or open it, planets and luminaries meaning the sun and the moon, and actually, just so you know, planet is the ancient Greek definition, so it doesn't matter what NASA says. In this particular case, planet means wandering light. And so Pluto is a wandering light by the ancient definition. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter whether NASA drops or qualifies or moves things. So planets and the bodies around us are wandering lights. They're also particles in wave. You may look up and you've been taught, well, Jupiter is a big gaseous ball and it's a circle and it's a particle. Or it's a thing. But it's also a wave, and its wave time or frequency is 12 years. It takes it 12 years to do one cycle. What's coming out of your cell phone is measured in hertz. When you broadcast a text, how fast it goes to the 5G tower is 40,000 hertz, which is 40,000 vibrations a second. But it's still particle and wave. These are just much slower frequencies. Pluto's frequency is once every 248 years. That doesn't mean it's not potent, but it's like the bass note playing out in the field. Does that make sense? So planets are particles and waves. They're also portals, gates, doors, and openings of perception.
Can I throw
Yes.
something? When you say, in case you're not catching it, 264 years around the sun, from the time it started to the time it goes back. You will never have a Pluto return unless you're taking some really good antioxidants. And Jupiter, 12, it takes 12 years for it to return back to where it was from the beginning. So that's its frequency that he's talking about.
We will come back to Pluto in the middle of our presentation because the United States of America countries have birth charts. July 4, 1776 is the birth chart for the United States. You could do it for any country, Malaysia. You could do it for corporations, governments. Everything has a beginning point. The United States is having its Pluto return this year. So, astrology is about evolution. As above, so below, as within, so without. And my favorite is, as in the universe, so within you. Astrology, at least from our perception, is not so much about prediction because we have free will. An example, which I'm not totally fond with, but I think it gets the point across, is we're like weather people. That doesn't help because the weather people here in Colorado aren't very good. Well, I mean, it says it's going to snow, and then it doesn't, and it's hot, and it's 80, but that's more probably because the consciousness of the planet is changing and our atmosphere is unpredictable. I should take it out of their hands and say that it's not the weather people's fault. It's because our conscious is chaotic consciousness and it's changing the weather around us. Well, it's the same thing. When we look at astrology, we're looking at the spiritual weather or the metaphysical weather of our planet. And the same with if it's predicted to rain because the barometric pressure is dropping, somebody who's a farmer is like, that's really good news. I really would like that. Someone who's planning an outdoor wedding is really upset. And so when someone says, is this good or bad? It depends upon your personal birth chart. That's where, so we're talking general trends in this thing, and then where the rubber hits the road for is it good, bad, ugly, happy, whatever for you, that depends upon your particular birth chart, your karma, your disposition, and your evolutionary state. So someone can have a very different reaction experience to these energies than you or your mother or your grandmother or your parent. So let's talk about big cycles of time. Did you have anything to add? There is this very interesting cycle of time that has repeated itself in ancient cultures around the world over and over and over again. And it's aware to NASA and to space agencies all around, and they use it. And they're like, well, why would they use a 25,000-year cycle of time when they're launching something like a satellite? I'll explain that in a moment. But the Greeks knew about it, the Babylonians know about it, the Hebrews know about it, the Bible even references it in parabolic references. It's known to the Lakota and the Ute and the Hopi have a reference to it. And it's in the Mayan predictions and times, it's in the Aboriginal predictions and times, it's in South America, it's in North America, it's in the Inuit. The yogis spoke about this cycle of time. And so if you're thinking, well, it's just kind of random that they might pick a almost 25,000-year amount of time, all of these ancient cultures have spoken of this. You know of it from some other words, probably. It's called the Great Year, or it's called the Platonic Year, or you've heard of the ages. Are we in the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age? You've heard of those, yes? Most people have heard of those. They didn't know how much time they expanded, but in the Lakota tradition, they call it the Four Directions. And it's represented by east, west, north, and south. So they're not all using the same language, so sometimes it's hidden in the symbology, and so we're not aware that they are talking about the same thing if you don't know. In yoga, it's called the yugas, Y-U-G-A. Right here, or Vedic. Vedic is the yogic word, it means knowledge. And the yugas are these four expanses of time. This little chart is showing them. The golden yuga is called the Sat Yuga, and it's when everything is in harmonic vibration on planet Earth. Another way to say that is there is nothing but truth. It is impossible for anything not to be truth. When you think about the age we're in, how much, whatever you believe truth might be, how much non-truth there is present. And could you imagine if you were walking around, even in this room, where everybody was absolutely truthful about everything? You couldn't hide anything, suppress it, lie about it, deceive it. Everything has to resonate to the frequency of truth in the Sat Yuga. We are far from that right now. The Silver Age, or called the Treta Yuga, is when there's a descent in consciousness. It's still pretty good. And the yogis say this is when all of the gods, avatars, goddess are present, incarnation and in form, because everything is so truthful and resonant that they can be here. It's not dissonant to them. The Bible speaks of these times when people spoke to God or they were having direct communication because things were in more harmonic frequency. Treta Yuga started to descend a little bit, and they represent it by a bull on four legs. When it goes into the Treta Yuga or into the Silver Age, the bull lifts up one leg. The world is still pretty stable, but it's a little wobbly. Then as we go into the Third Age, the Bronze Age, or it's called the Dwarf Yuga, the bull picks up two legs. The Lakota have this exact same description, but it's a buffalo. And some say, did they know that? Did they talk to each other? Why are they doing that? Well, from this perspective, all of this came from Atlantis. And the information came out of Atlantis and it went to the Aboriginals, it went to the Celtic lands, it went up to the Mayans, it went down to South America, it went to Tibet, it went to a number of places. And there were a few wisdom keepers after the Great Flood where everything sank and went under that passed this knowledge on. Iron Age, the bull has one leg. Does it feel like a one-legged bull these days? And the Lakota and both the yogis say, and then at the end of the Iron Age, the last leg of the bull falls. And that's when the world goes back and has a rebirth, but also a death, the year of the portal. By the way, if you want to go to the scientific side, look up precession of the equinoxes. That's the technical name of this age. It's 26,000 years. Did you want to say something?
Sounds good.
These are broken down. So this great cycle of almost 26,000 years is broken into 12 sub-ages. And you've heard of them. They're the same signs of the zodiac. Each sub-age is 2,100 years. The last sub-age, does anybody know what it was? It's the age of Pisces. We'll come back to that for a second. I'll just point out there are other ways of marking time. Has anybody heard of the patriarchy? Some people call the age we're in, or one of the eons that we're in, the patriarchal age, and that it began 6,000 years ago. This is year 4500 BCE, before Common Era, or before Christ, on which system we use. And it's considered to have begun to come to a close in the year 2000. But because we're talking about 6,000 year cycles, when it comes to an end, it's not like it's done. There's a long 500 year transition time. And so one of our astrologer teachers, Kaipacha, another wisdom keeper from the middle of the last century, Rudolph Steiner. You all know Rudolph Steiner, whether you know him or not. He's the one who created Waldorf schools. He has theosophy and anthroposophy. He was an artist, he was a theologian, he was a writer, he was a mystic, he was an astrologer, he was an architect. He also worked with these energies. He also worked, there's another source that this comes from, Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher, Sri Peshwar, who's from the yogic tradition, also references these. This is another age, so this is the Kali Yuga. So remember I said that age that was descending when the bull falls. Some say that it came to a close in 1899.
We're in it still.
We're in it still, but it has a 300-year transition.
It's kind of like I was told the other day, giant cargo freights out in the ocean, when they kill their engine, they keep gliding for another 200-300 feet just because their momentum and power. It's a similar kind of thing, even though we might be shifting, there's some glide that's still residual from that old motor.
A simple example is when it's the spring equinox, winter's supposed to be done, but it could snow on spring equinox. I think it snowed for another 3 weeks or a month after equinox. So the death season of this is a while. And there's a mixture of energies. The age of Aquarius, the age that we are dawning into, some say began around 1950. Take these with a wide grain of salt, but energetically we're in some sort of mixture here, and that it won't fully feel like it until age 2050. So we are middle beings. It's a 100-year swath of time. So just to get a little reference, let's talk about the last age, the age of Pisces. Basically from year 0, but a little bit sooner until about the year 2000. Well, some people, you've heard the song, The Age of Aquarius, and people are dancing in the streets and everybody's loving and happy, and then it didn't happen. Why? It was supposed to, right? Because the song said it was. When it shifts from one astrological age to another, there is a frequency of energy in the field that is shifting, like a season. It's going from spring to summer. But it's not saying whether it's good or bad. That energy can play out harmoniously or disharmoniously. And what does that? Your free will. What you all choose affects whether the next age will be harmonious or disharmonious. So the age of Pisces, let's talk about what negative Pisces energy looks like. It's destructive. It's greedy. It harvests resource. It's full of fear. It seeds chaos. Tons of suppression. Don't do this. Somebody else is in control. Give me that. Scarcity mindset. There's not enough for everybody. We need to hoard. It's materialistic. It's greedy. I use that word. Controlling. It's dominated by religion. And why I use religion, I'm not saying whether it's bad or good, but religion puts a certain number of people in control with a certain dogma in control. God is separate from you and God is separate from nature, or goddess, or spirit. Dominate nature. War, suffering, asleep, falling dense into consciousness, forgetting, can't remember who you are, where you come from spiritually. Did any of this seem like it played out the last 2,000 years? Not everything was. Here's the positive side. This is what the age of Pisces could have totally been by free will choice. It's dominated by love, unconditional love. There's nothing that you have to do to be accepted by another. Non-dual. Nature is sacred. There's abundance as opposed to scarcity. It's cosmic, not material. Unconditional. It's creative, intuitive, empathic. It's dominated, or that's another masculine word. Its essence is peace. Directly sourced to spirit or God. There's no intermediary between you and the Great One. It's spiritual as opposed to religious. One's own individual journey. No boundaries, imagination, dreams, and samadhi or oneness. If you want to sum this up, just listen to Bob Marley, One Love. That is what the age of Pisces could have been. Do you want to say anything? Mm-hmm. Katrina's a Pisces. Now, every age, if it's going wobbly, going against the grain, the opposite sign is the medicine. Mm-hmm. What the age of Pisces needed was more Virgo energy. Virgo energy is health, free will choices, discernment. Nature is sacred. Spirit is in the physical world. Service, self-care, being humble, Mother Gaia, and the feminine. Basically, the feminine energy was needed the last 2,000 years to balance it. Virgo is the sign of Mother Earth herself. Seeing that the earth is sacred and that you all come from the earth, you're natural. We talked about this, we talked about the Oxford Dictionary.
Go ahead.
If you look up in the Oxford Dictionary or Webster's Dictionary the definition of nature, it lists a whole bunch of things. In the last sentence, it says everything except humans.
Oh.
It amplifies the whole Piscean age.
The Oxford Dictionary.
Oxford Dictionary. Nature is everything but human. Everything but this. So being natural, humans aren't nature, humans are separate. It puts you in a place of dominion, of control, of suppression, of gathering resources. If you're separate from nature, it's something you can destroy. You're destroying your own terrain, your own birthplace. So here's the age of Aquarius. Let's look at the negative potentials first. Enslavement, fear and control, suppression, division, isolating people, forcing people to do things, destruction, death, cyborg, meaning having technology take over the natural. No soul, taking the soul out of it. It's completely void of soul and emotion. It's completely metallic and cold and number crunching and algorithmic. How often we talk about how good the algorithm of TikTok is. That's totally Aquarian. It's political, it's divisive, it's fanatical, and the power goes from the 99% to the 1%. Resources, power, money, ideology goes to 1%. When the ages are shifting, we're in that chaotic point between the age of Pisces, you see both the potential of the shadow and the light come up, and so at least I feel we're seeing a lot of the negative side of Aquarius already rising right in the beginning of it. What would change it is our free will choice. Do we want to choose this, consciously or unconsciously? You want to say anything?
Yeah, you can go to the positive and then I'll say it. we need positive.
So the positive side of Aquarius is love. It's emotions and connection. It's light energy. It's freedom, unity, awakening, spiritual. It's all about community. And so instead of separating, isolating, it says come together. It's one world again. But one world because it's free will choice of individuals, not one world because it's the choice of 1%. It's forgiveness, compassion, liberty, revolution, revelation, which I didn't put in there, like awakening, like, whoa, mind blown, and evolution.
So what I wanted to say is, as he said, we're in the in-between, going from Pisces into Aquarius, this age shift. And you, as a soul, selected to be these between beings to help navigate this. I mean, he put back on the other side about 1950 to 2050. Think of a 100-year swath there. Most, like some of you are a little older than 1950, but this is us. Your soul selected this. You have something to do here to help us stay in the positive side of these signs. And if you also notice, between the positives and the negatives, there's some clearly different pieces between the two, between Pisces and Aquarius, but there's some crossover between the two on both the negative and the positive side. So something about those crossovers is akin to you. This is something that drives your soul forward and through to do this time period. Because there's ages of all the signs. There's, Cancer into Leo, years back, eons back. You chose this time. So as you're going through this, kind of hone into what is your place in this. And it's really easy for us when the S is hitting the fan, for us to just curl up, ball up, and cry, hide, play small, get little, and we can't. And if you're here, you care. You care. And you're looking and seeking on what it is that you can do to help navigate into the next awakening for our humanity. And you have something specific, it's right there in your chart, that says exactly how you can show up at this inner being time.
I was going to ask what the opposite sign of Aquarius was, but I went to the next slide. But you can see in your chart, anywhere you see Aquarius in your own chart, go 120 degrees, opposite mirror image, and you'll see Leo. Leo is the medicine for the age of Aquarius when it's going into the negative, which is authenticity, being real, not being a cyborg, not being shut down, not being non-emotional. It's authentic, like I have feelings, I have reactions, I'm a human being. It's playfulness. There's been a lot of shutdown of play, no going to concerts, no interacting with people, no creating art, no being spontaneous. Stay home, do things. Whether you think it's for good reason or not, it is showing the shadow side of the age of Aquarius. Whether you disagree on the reasons for why it's coming or not, it is here. Loving. I've seen a lot of not loving energy out there. Isolation, separation, not a lot of, remember how we started this talk of quantum physics is non-dual. A lot of duality right now. Them, us. These do this, these don't. These will do this, these won't. These need to be isolated, these won't. Lion-hearted, courageous, stand up. Be in your heart power. The yogis say your heart, when it's inflamed, is the brightness of 10,000 suns. They didn't say 4. And if you want a scientific validation, like, well, that's just poetry. I mean, it's awesome poetry, but it's poetry. German and Japanese scientists studied the heart and how many photons it puts out. You bioluminesce, by the way. Always have. Science just realized it now. when yogis say your light is shining, you're like, wait a second, science is saying the bioluminescence. Are they talking metaphorically, or do they really mean your light is shining? Well, an average human, when they're in there just doing their daily thing, thinking, you express 20 photons a second from your heart, meaning 20 little bits of light come out. The moment you turn your consciousness, your mind, to your heart and think loving thoughts towards somebody else, 100,000 photons a second come from your heart. 20 to 100,000. It's like one sun to 10,000 suns. That's the power. So if you're just cruising around in a state of fear and suppression and down, you're putting out a tiny little bit of light. And there's nothing magical that you have to do. Like, you don't have to go through yoga training. You don't have to go to the Himalayas and stand on pyramids. That's great. We like to do that. We want to do more of that. And just changing your mindset to be aware of your heart will instantly change the field. Remember how we said quantum entanglement? If you're putting out 20 photons a second and you're in a fear state, and then you change your mind and you think loving thoughts, you're putting out 100,000 photons a second, and people in your field are feeling it, consciously or subconsciously. Our teacher from the Mayan tradition, an elder who's worked with Katrina and I over the past 8 years, the Mayans have a hand symbol for the age of Aquarius. How would they know about that? But they're gone, right? They wouldn't know what to do. They have a hand symbol that is simple for a 2-year-old to remember. How to get along in the age of Aquarius. It says unity in diversity and diversity in unity. Unity in diversity and diversity in unity. Does that make sense? All the fingers, all the individuals are free will to do as they want, and they can coordinate to do whatever needs to be done together, but none is being controlled, but they are working together. Unity in diversity and diversity in unity. Good, sovereign leadership. Do we have good sovereign leadership these days? Compassion, creativity, being human. These are all Leo principles. You don't have to take our list, go meditate on a lion. Go watch lions. So these were a few things from We Moon, a calendar that we like to use. They put this list together. Things that can be helpful: save our ecosystem first and our home planet. Love Mother Gaia would be another way to put it. Create a mutual beneficial world without oppressing freedom of individuals. Unity and diversity, diversity and unity. Communities that support the good of the whole and foster individual liberty and creativity. Ask new questions, generate new ideas, and let go of old assumptions. Okay, so now we're getting closer in time. We've made it to the 60s. There are cycles playing out now that began 25,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. Now, most recent one is 1965 to 66. It's a 133-year cycle, and so we're still in the nascent youngness of it. It would be like a 21-year-old or a teenager right now. And this was called the Pluto-Uranus conjunction. Who was born anywhere between 63 and 67? If you don't want to raise your hand, don't, but just know that you are in the swath. People born during that time have the same energetic symbology inside of them that the world did that had what happened during the 60s. Pluto is the energy, frequency, quantum wave of evolution. The power of things that need to evolve. Another way to put it is it's Shiva energy, creation and destruction. What needs to die and what needs to rebirth. It is intense. Pluto is intensity of energy. It's atomic. Uranus, or Uranus, is the energy of revolution and sudden change. And so the energy of creation and destruction met up with the energy of revolution. Does that make sense why the field of the 60s might have been? What does that look like? What happened those years? Civil Rights Act. Malcolm X comes up and is assassinated. The Voting Rights Act came into being. Vietnam War, Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights and assassination. The Black Panthers, the Cuban Missile Crisis. JFK and RFK are assassinated. Woodstock, Kent State shootings, race riots all over the country. Equal Rights Amendment was put in place. The birth control pill came out in 1970. Yes, it was 5 years after, but this is a 133-year swath. And so from about 60 to 75 was the most intense of this energy. You have Roe versus Wade, that was 71. It's still in our field now because it's still a young energy for this consciousness. For a human being like that was 60 years ago, haven't we settled this? But when we're talking cosmic energies, we haven't, because we're in the first quarter turn of this energy. We haven't settled whether we should be going to war. We haven't settled whether people have equal rights or not. We also have Earth Day was born in 1970. And social upheaval was all around the world. Concepts that came out of the Pluto-Uranus, or frequencies of awareness that came into the field that were formerly not so present. Spiritualism. A lot of you are here today because the forerunners before you started to investigate yoga and astrology and Reiki and sacred geometry and spirit and meditation. Environmentalism. People started to say, the earth is our home, right? We can't destroy our terrain. The past 2,000 years of the age of Pisces, this is trouble. The earth is sacred, let's take it back. Our water's polluted, our air's polluted. Self-healing. How many self-help books came out of this time? And we still have them. You go down to the whole section of libraries. 1950, there was no self-healing section. This is another part of the age of Aquarius that started to come in 1950. You can take the power back to take your own spiritualism. It's not somebody else. So it's not a guru or a pope or somebody else saying you can go to God and you can go to your spirit this way. It started to go, people says, maybe I can do it myself. Gender equality. Plant medicines started to arise at this time. They've always been around, but this is for the Western mind. Feminism. Awakening became a word. People weren't saying awakening in 1940. Love was a predominant word that came out of the 60s. The peace symbol, peace and love. This would amplify everything here. This is Ram Dass, by the way, in his civil rights movement. Consciousness became a word to the greater collective. Individuation. People wanted individual freedoms, freedom to speech. That was a huge one. We're getting heavily tested right now whether freedom of speech is something we really want or not. It came out of this time where people were willing to uprise and stand in the streets and protest to say freedom of speech is worth dying and living for. Also, so was 1776, by the way, which we're going to visit here, that people say, I'd rather be dead than have no freedom of speech. And they did die. Peace, social, civil, medical equality, and LGBTQ were all things that came out of the 60s and 70s. There was the Pluto-Uranus square, so those two planets came together in 1965, and they're like the cycle of the moon. In 2012, they had come around to a square. And metaphysically, this means when they first started, you saw on the former screen, I put the word unconscious. Not meaning that these things aren't aware, but it's like the birth moment. Like when a baby comes out of the womb, it's not stupid, but it's not ego conscious. And so these are all birthed at this time, and they're new, they're in the field, we're exploring them, we're finding out what they mean. 2012 until 2025 is the first test of all those previous principles. Do we really want those things? Do we really want gender equality? Do we really want to protect the environment? Do we really value spiritualism? Do we really value freedom of speech? Do we really want people to be equal? It's being tested now from 2012 to 2025. And by the way, at the start of 2012, if you've forgotten what was going on there, this was the Arab Spring and the Wall Street rising up and people sleeping out in Wisconsin saying the 1% are controlling us. We need to take it back. And then all over Persia and that area of the world, there was uprisings and people coming up. And also there was some in the Asian world as well, on the other side of the globe. This is the Mayan Calendar, 2012. By the way, I won't talk too much about it, but the Mayans had predicted all of this, or they spoke of the frequency. When they were talking about this on the news media, you rarely ever saw them talking to an actual Mayan elder about what it meant, right? It was some newscaster saying, well, it's 2012 and the world didn't seem to end. I don't know if they knew what they were talking about, or someone saying the world's gonna end and people are out in the streets. What the Mayans were toning into was all of this. In the year 2012, a conscious shift had happened where the sun, the earth, and our solar system is a waveform. It goes up and down. We're on the arms, like a Sufi, of our galaxy and spinning like this. The arms of our galaxy are 250 million light years across. Earth is somewhere here in this arm. And as we spin, it takes 250 million years for Earth and our solar system to go back to where it came from in our galaxy. And as it does, our galaxy does this. It's not just a flat plane, and so it's dancing. And as it dances, our solar system goes up and down relative to the central sun of our galaxy, or the black hole, the central consciousness of our galactic neighborhood. For the last 13,000 years, we've been on the southerly tip of consciousness since Atlantis fell. In 2012, the dance had come this way, and for the first time in 13,000 years, our solar system lifted to the northern consciousness. And so the Mayans said one age was dying and one age was birthing. And they said, by the way, the years from 2012 to 2025, they didn't say had to be, but could be very chaotic depending upon your free will choices at this time. Do you want to say anything on that? Anybody want to dance? Okay, now we've made it to 2020. Was anybody here for our talk in 2020 on the astrology report? Anybody remember us saying something's going to happen in 2020, it's going to change the world forever? And people took notes and they said, well, I don't know, maybe. What could that be? By the way, it wasn't just us, it was astrologers all over the world. And they weren't predicting well, some may have predicted specifically. There's one woman named Renee Brown who said there's going to be a strange cardiovascular virus coming out that will affect the world. And she did that in 2008. She predicted the 2020 thing. But whether it was a specific prediction or not, there was why would astrologers say this? There was a coming together of two frequencies. Remember the 60s? Astrologers for a long time before that, and it wasn't well known because astrology wasn't in the field in 1950 and 40 for most people. But there were some astrologers, and they knew the 1960s were going to be wild. Whether it was going to be good wild, bad wild, left wild, right wild, it wasn't known. But the frequencies of, again, creation and destruction were meeting revolution. Whatever that meant, it was going to come. And so 2020 was another one of these huge energetic meetings. And so it wasn't that Katrina and I or other astrologers saying, we know what's going on, but there were two huge frequencies coming together. And there was inevitable because every time they've come together in history, it's been a kaboom. And it was the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. Remember, Pluto is creation and destruction, what needs to die and rebirth. And Saturn has to do with the structure of society and the world global political environment.
You guys said this is a wake-up year. I have it written down here. That was the first thing you said, this is a wake-up.
Oh, yeah, okay. So we call 2020 the year of the awakening. Thanks. I fell asleep on that one. And we held our workshop on January 12th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
And why is that date significant? This was in hindsight completely. Energies can happen, and the most significant thing of the year, we didn't know it happened until we're far past it, but it was the seed moment. I think it's significant because January 12th was the day that the first COVID death was confirmed in Wuhan. There was more before that. And it was the day that China and the Wuhan Institute of Technology announced that it had fully sequenced the COVID SARS-2 virus viral.
Is there any significance to all those twos?
Great question. Yes.
Yes.
Your job is to tell us what it is.
Yeah. There's gotta be, right? Yeah.
Do you want to say anything on this? No. So why would we know this would be an event that is of significance? Meaning the meeting of Pluto and Saturn. They meet every 33 to 38 years. So basically 3 times a century, these things come together. The last conjunction, let's skip that part. So, in the previous century, they came together in 1914. This was the start of World War I. They were coming together in 1947, and so these 33 to 38 year swaths, it's not always the exact date because remember, these are long seasons of energy. The energy is approaching. So a lot of astrologers attribute what happened in the 1940s, World War II. But if you look at the year 47, which maybe you're not as familiar with, it's a crazy year. It's the year that India and Pakistan split, and millions of people were killed there. This is the year that the World Nations was put in place. This was the year that Palestine was demoted as a state, Israel was raised up to a state. This was the year that the World Bank came online. Those were all heavily significant events for what's happened in our world. 1982, not as well known either. But if you look at the general topography of what's going on around the world with ideologies and splitting of things between, like in America, there was a huge division between Democratic and Republican, Reaganism, the rise, there was the Falklands War happening. This was the year that the volcano Kilauea erupted in Hawaii, and it's still going. It's the longest going volcano in the history of our modern times.
Just erupted again yesterday.
Just erupted again yesterday.
On the eclipse.
And then when these two planets oppose each other, so they come together every 33 years, and then every about 15, 17 years, they're opposite. These are all heavily significant events because the rhythm of Pluto and Saturn coming together and separating is the rhythm of how our society moves.
Mm-hmm.
These are the piano players to the rhythm of the world. 31 was all the events around the Great Depression and the rise of fascism all throughout Europe. Also the Dust Bowl and other events like here to our environment. 65 was a huge year. That was also the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. So you had this huge triple event going on. 65 had all the things to do with civil rights, but this also had a lot to do with the monetary banking systems and mortgage systems being put in place. Some of them are more subtle, but they highly affect the way your world plays out. Money and finance and homes was a huge thing in 65 that most people didn't know about, and how you all interact with the banking and buying houses now is being heavily influenced. And then this one was the World Trade Center event, 2001, August 5th to 2002. So the planet Pluto, now we're talking current 2020 astrology, 2022. The planet Pluto has been in the sign of Capricorn since 2008 and will remain there fully until 2024. When Pluto, the energy of things that need to be created and destroyed and evolve, is in the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn is society and structure, it's been pointing to everything in society that needs to evolve. Whether it does or not is your free will choice. So these things always come back to free will choice as an individual and as a collective. Its previous cycle was 1762 to 1777, the birth of the United States. So all the things for both the United States and for the world that has arisen between 2008 and 24, and also the previous cycle has to do with authority, karma, laws, rules, institutions, courts, consequences, structure, time, duty, wisdom, control, manipulation, and suppression.
Can I say something? Saturn is home in Capricorn, and Saturn is judgment, karmas. And so Pluto's coming back around, maybe you're getting to this.
Sure.
Pluto's coming back around to the United States, and it's asking us on this return, have you figured it out? Have you done these things that you said you were going to do clear back then in 1776? And if not, then it's the destruction of things. It's you pay the man. That's what that image of Capricorn is representing, is that judgment day of things.
If you're wondering what the United States is being judged on, it wrote its own soul contract. It's called the Constitution. And it's called the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. It's the soul contract of the United States. On its birth, and in its birth inception from 1776 to when the Constitution was put in place in the 1780s, it said, we promise to do all these things. We promise all people are created equal with inalienable rights. We promise freedom of speech. We promise freedom of trial. We promise habeas corpus. We promise all of these things. And karma says, okay, we got your soul contract. You have 248 years to see if you can do it. And if you don't, then it's karmic consequences. So Pluto right now, we feel, when it does this, Pluto's job is to bring things that have once been hidden into plain sight. So Pluto is exposing in plain sight what is karmically out of balance. Isn't it kind of crazy these days when we feel like, oh my God, how are they getting away with that? It is so in plain sight. It is so obvious and blatant what is happening, whatever you may be considering. It's so totally not in alignment with karma, or reason, or common sense, or reality. It's everywhere right now. What do we do about it? We'll get specifically to the United States here in a second, but so this was 2021. This is an energy that is persisting into 2022. We talked about this in our 2021 presentation, that this was the most significant energy of 2021. Saturn square Uranus. They squared each other 3 times in February, June, and December. And we put this out in our report at the beginning of January, I think it was January 2nd last year, that this year was unable to settle. People were thinking after 2020, 2021, we cruise around and get right back into the groove, we forget about coronavirus, no more this, no more that. At least the astrology was saying nope. It wasn't saying whether it was bad or good or specifically what was happening, but it said the year would be unable to settle itself, unable to resolve. It would be electric. Things would boom, suddenly shift here, and suddenly boom, shift there. Again, it's not a comment on bad or good, but the astrology is just looking at frequencies. There would be sudden shifts of unexpected things in 2021. It would be restless, full of tension. There would also be lots of innovations. There would be lots of dichotomy between revolution and control. Well, all around the world, whether it's on the media or not, people are revolting and rising up, and there's suppression and control and push down, and nothing happened there, no news. And then there's a whole thing between evolution and contraction. There seems to be an expansion. Let's go out, no, let's come back. Let's go out, let's come back. Let's go out, let's come back. And then there's a whole dance between the old and the new. Whether it's good or bad, there's a whole set of consciousness that wants the old structure to stay in place because it's familiar. And some of it works. Some of it's beneficial. Some of it's helpful. And then there's a whole side that wants the new. And some of it works, and some of it's beneficial. Some of it's not. Some of it is the shadow side of Aquarius. Here's a new technology to control. There's been a whole dance between the patriarchy and I could say the matriarchy, the awakening feminine consciousness, where it's inclusion, community, hugging, being around people, seeing people in their eyes, inviting in, healing. The rebel versus authority. You want to say anything about this? So before we get to now the very specifics of 2022, this is something that is very helpful, we feel, for you to understand. You want to talk about this one?
Sure. So go to the bottom of the pyramid. This is before I go into this, if 2 people are born, 2 twins, born with the exact same birthday, maybe a couple minutes apart, less mom, and same place. Their charts are essentially exactly the same, but they're 2 totally different people. How is this? How does that happen? Well, one of those people is maybe explanation for it is a different level of consciousness in their soul. And that's what this pyramid is breaking down. So maybe even though in this year they were born same time, same place, same everything, one has a more advanced soul and one has maybe a newer or newer soul. So this bottom part of the pyramid is called the consensus reality of what people are born into. And this is, as you can see, the lion's share of our humanity is in consensus reality. And they have, they're just gonna go along because they're kind of newer in their experience of living, and they're going along. Kind of sheep-like, I hate to say, but that's kind of it. And that follow external authority directly because they're newbies. It's like taking little kids and they're gonna listen to you because they don't know. Although little kids know a lot. And then the next.
One thing it's conscious-driven reality or ego. It's ego-driven reality.
And this tends to be superficial, materialistic, caught up in consumerism, like keeping up with the Joneses, like comparing a lot to how everyone else is. My outfit is good as your outfit, that stuff. And then you start to feel like, hey, wait a minute, I've got something unique about myself. I'm an individual, I can feel it. And I don't like what that man or woman, that authority figure is telling me to do. And you start to break out a little bit. And you maybe in your same lifetime you can move from consensus into individuated, the next phase. Or maybe you get to a certain point, you leave this life, as you come back in the next soul level, you come back individuated because you got yourself that far this time around. So you come back individuated, and now you're like, I'm my own person. And we know these people. They're just like the rebels of society. They're fighting against everything, including themselves. And then they go so far, they're so far isolated that no one wants to be around them. Like, just time out over there. And then they start to realize, wait a minute, it's not all by myself. We need people. We need community. We need loving kindness. So then they start to go, oh, it's the oneness. We're separate? No. We're individuals? Yes. So we have to come back together to the one. And then that's that top level of the pyramid, which is the spiritual or spiritualized. So consensus, individuated, spiritualized. And then you can see the side words over there. As the bottom, the consensus was ego. The individuated becomes like personal, me, and then the spiritualized is more the collective, the oneness of things. And so you yourself are probably in somewhere between individuated to spiritualized if you're here. Because most sheep are not checking this stuff out. And so you're awakening to these next phases of what it is to be in our highest consciousness. To be in our highest consciousness.
I will put out there the caveat, should really be careful to be like, oh yeah, I want to be here, and that person's here. This is, I would use this more as a tool just for general understanding and try to put people in categories because that's going backwards. And everybody, no matter what evolutionary state they're in, they're all having to learn the same earth lessons of love, compassion, kindness, connectivity. Someone who's individuated can be having a really hard time with that. Someone who's in consensus reality can be super loving and super compassionate, and they're doing pretty good on the evolutionary state. So it's not about bad or good, or this one's better. You're all having the same lessons repeated at different levels of consciousness. And we can phase in and out. Part of your being can still be in consensus reality, and part of you is stretching for spiritualized. So what you reject in others, you still have them inside yourself. So be careful, because I know some people are like, oh yeah, I know someone who's that. Well, that'll put you right back to that.
Yeah.
I also want to mention that there's a lot of awakening happening. You might feel it in your own self where there's a great shift within you and you seem to go from 0 to 100 and you don't know why. And that is part of that jumping into these levels of consciousness where you're suddenly very empathic and you're very sensitive to other people's emotions and feelings all around you. You're moving through that consciousness on a rapid level, and it's happening unilaterally to many people simultaneously.
This is just the same thing rewritten. By the way, we'll send this out to you all as a PDF. I see people at home also taking photographs on their iPhones. They can capture it. So at home, you'll have this sent out to you as well. This was a slide and I didn't need to put in there. So here we are arriving at 2022. This is the most significant energy of 2022 in our estimation. The most significant new energy. Those other energies of the Pluto-Uranus conjunction from the 60s is still pertinent. The energy of the 2020 conjunction of Pluto-Saturn is still pertinent. The energy of Pluto and Saturn squaring is still pertinent. Does that make sense? That this is the new flavor coming in, or the new frequency, or the new vibration that we're looking at. And the planet Jupiter takes just about 12 years to go around the sun. There's a little zodiac on the floor. So it spends about 1 year in each sign. Every year is flavored by Jupiter. And by the way, this is how the Chinese zodiac works. It's a Jupiterian look at life. It's a 12-year cycle of energies. Different astrologies use different planets as their lead sometimes to see consciousness. So it's not whether one astrology system is more relevant. They're looking at different angles of consciousness, different lenses. Jupiter has been in the sign of Aquarius for the past year. It's going in the Pisces on December 30th. Well, that's this year, and then it will persist until May 10th. When it goes retrograde, it'll slip. No, it'll go into Aries on May 10th, and then it will go retrograde and come back. Jupiter is associated as a co-ruler of Pisces, meaning its energy is most harmonic there. It's at home. It's like, oh, yeah, I've got energy. You want to say something?
No, I just like that.
So, balance. These are the balanced expressions of both Jupiter and Pisces. So the archetype of Jupiter and Pisces, when they're balanced, is all about trust, unconditional love, faith, vision, wisdom, cosmic, nature. This is the balanced expression of Jupiter and Pisces. It's natural. It's a natural frequency like red, just like a color of the rainbow. So the possible positive outcomes, or I don't like to use positive, harmonic outcomes, is the possibility to overcome differences in ideology and find common humanity and spirit in each other, non-dual. So both Jupiter and Pisces are very non-dual energies. Finally ready to address the crisis we're in with open hearts and open minds.
Just to give a little archetype to the individual, the planet Jupiter is the great teacher. It means expansion, it's abundance. And oftentimes Santa Claus gets like archetype of Jupiter, just that big, jolly, happy kind of energy. When it's, Santa Claus is a positive version of it. So, but to me, like an overarching word for Jupiter is teacher and faith. 2 words, I guess. And then Pisces, its archetype or energy or a way to look at Pisces is spirituality, imagination, oneness. It can also be delusion. It can also be there's no boundaries and you don't put boundaries for yourself. So when I start to personify the planets and look at them as people or personalities, and same with the signs, it helps me right away match them up. So I can go, the teacher in spirituality, or expansive spirituality, or expansive delusion if we go the other way. That's just a quick way to learn the astrology, is to learn the archetypes of the planets and the signs, and then eventually the houses. That can kind of come third. They all have relation to each other in that way.
So when Jupiter goes into Pisces, it's going to meet up with the planet Neptune. So both Neptune and Jupiter are hanging out in Pisces in 2022.
And Neptune is home in Pisces. That's its home sign. Each planet has its own sign that it belongs to. So it's a double whammy of that spiritual energy. Because what Pisces is, everything I just said about Pisces, spiritual, imaginative, delusional, dreamlike, is the same as Neptune. Same. So Neptune in Pisces, double whammy of that spirituality piece. And Jupiter is going to be conjunct or close, hanging. They're in soup together. It's a big soup.
And this is a once in every 13, 14-year alignment, so it's a not as frequent energy. Every 13 to 14 years, Jupiter and Neptune will go into a different sign and hang out. And then Jupiter will go around quickly. Neptune's much more slow moving and join up. The specific date is April 12th. That's the exact date of the alignment. But because these are very slow moving frequencies, the whole year is this energy. The magnetism is most intense here, but the magnetism is from now until the end of 2022.
This is big holy day time for many Western traditions. We think about, we have Easter, Passover, all around in this time. And this is big spirituality. And even if we're not, practicing any particular faith, it's the same kind of concept for your own self. Dive in at this time. Really attune. Get in alignment with Source. Remember I said mark these particular days that have a stronger influence. This is a big time. This is a big one. Maybe even gather in community and have some kind of ceremony to awaken that open-minded, open heart with your like-minded friends. And do that electronic beaming, luminous beams for the other side in the quantum entanglement for others to get there. What if we all did just a little bit of that on this time frame? What kind of healing energy would we be putting out?
By the way, now you have your personal birth charts in front of you. We're heading to have the rubber hit the road. If you want to know how this energy affects you personally, you find where Pisces is on the wheel in your chart. Pisces, the fish symbol, or it's this symbol here.
It looks like two back-to-back
Its color will be
Cs.
blue on your chart, so it looks like a line with two C's facing different directions. That's where the area of your life will be interacting with this. Wherever that is in your chart, wherever Pisces is in your chart, is where Neptune and Jupiter will be spending its time. And so everything we've talked about, spirituality or delusion, we'll talk about this in a moment, but Neptune also rules addictive behaviors. This is where these things could show up in your own life.
Or clearing
Addictive behaviors. So I know everybody's curious if you found Pisces and your neighbor hasn't helped them out. But wherever Pisces is in your chart, that's where Jupiter and Neptune will be hanging out.
Yep. And then look what planets are in there, because they're going to be a player. They're affecting this.
Like example, if you are a Sun Pisces, Jupiter and Neptune will be hanging out around your birth sun or your native personality energy, and so this will be affecting your persona. If your moon is there, it will be affecting your dreams and imagination. If Mercury is there, it will be affecting how you think. It might break apart old thoughts. By the way, Neptune has been in Pisces will be there for 14 years. I think it's very interesting. This is where we're talking about historical events that have played out. When Neptune went into Pisces in 2011, this was Fukushima, the radioactive power plant having itself melt down when there was an earthquake. That event is not over, by the way. That tone set the tone for the entire time of Pisces. Unknown particles of unseen things will affect us throughout these 14 years. Whether it's radiation, viromes, ideas. And Fukushima totally fell off the news, but the radiation is still pouring out endlessly into the sea. It's not even something we talk about. It is an environmental disaster on levels that are far beyond what we're even understanding. Nobody talks about it now. But even not talking about it, it's going to come back into our consciousness because it is not done. So Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces, Katrina talked about this. Jupiter, she said, has to do with expansion. However, Jupiter's energy is limited. Its ability to expand is limited to things that can be explained, meaning philosophy, logic, and reality. You can expand out, your philosophy can expand out, your logic can expand out, your reality can expand out, but it has to be semi-logical, semi-rational. That's what Jupiter rules. It's not good or bad, but that's the mind part. Neptune rules the spirit. So it's boundless, does not need to justify or adhere to rationale or logic. It doesn't mean that it's not true, but it doesn't have to follow A to B. It can go A to Z in non-linear, non-dual, non-time space. Like you suddenly know something in your inner being and nobody told you. It just realized and awoken. That is a Neptunian thing. And a lot of us are having these moments, a lot. Katrina and I see people coming into the studios and they're timid and they're like, I didn't want to tell you a story. You might think I'm crazy. And they tell us a story about something that's happened in their inner world of awakening. And they're like, I don't think anybody's ever happened to this. And like, take a yoga class and about half the other people are here because that happened to them. And they're afraid to talk about it because they'll be deemed as crazy because it's not logical. It doesn't fit the psychological paradigm. If I go tell a psychologist, they're going to say you're nuts. In the old shamanic traditions, what we classify as a lot of neurological things have to relate to spiritual things awakening or spiritual things being suppressed. So during this time, a lot of people have had awakening events from 2011 to 2025. But they're afraid to step forward because they don't fit into consensus reality. It doesn't totally fit into explanations. However, this is where people start turning to the ancient traditions like yoga and shamanism and the Lakota and the Mayan and the Babylonian and ancient Chinese and Taoists because they have explanations of all this because it's the natural state of human beings. Of course you would have an awakening. Of course you would see God. Of course you would hear voices from the trees. Of course rocks are conscious. Of course star beings exist. It's not crazy, it's natural. And if you talk to elders in all of these traditions, as an example, I had a student who came in and said, I think I believe in star beings. He was being very quiet. And I was like, yeah, we feel like we've seen them. And by the way, all of our teachers don't speak about them like, yeah, there might be, and it's just natural. Of course there are star beings. Of course the universe is conscious. And of course we've been interacting with them throughout all time. It's not like a mystery. People are awakening to this. By the way, if you don't believe in star beings, it's okay. So this is all about expanding non-physical world or duality and going into the spiritual realm, as Katrina said. Everywhere at once, non-dual and infinite. That is the possibility of 2022. The possibility. The frequency is available. It's in the field.
And remember, you're the interbeings. You've chosen to be here at this time to bridge the gaps. And that free will is what is your way to do that. It's a choice to do that. So choose, please, choose to use your heart power in the right way. Right way's maybe not the
Harmonic way.
The harmonic way.
You are a portal for consciousness. What you choose is what allows to come into this frequency. So these frequencies are in the field, and you all are radio receivers, and what you tune your frequency to is what you'll fall in. If you're tuning into fear, which is the other possibility of this, you will ground fear into yourself and into the planet.
And delusion.
And delusion, and control, and enslavement, and suppression, and all that, you will ground that in. Your free will is the portal to which way this frequency can be toned. Aldous Huxley, you all had to read him probably in high school. He wrote Brave New World. Very interesting book at this time, if you remember it. If you don't, we'll look up what the premises of that book written in 1932 was. He also, this is where the band The Doors got their name. The Doors of Perception. They read this book and said, wow. And his whole book about the doors of perception is, it's about toning of frequency. You either see heaven or hell, depending upon your consciousness. And it's here on the planet right now in both frequencies. William Blake wrote the same thing. The doors of perception, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as infinite. And then what did Zach Bush say about consciousness?
That consciousness is a lens in which we can see the truth.
If you want a book to read, read this one. By the way, if you like Ram Dass, Aldous Huxley heavily influenced Ram Dass. He knew Aldous Huxley at the end of his life. Aldous Huxley died in '62. Ram Dass, formerly Richard Alpert, got kicked off of the Harvard staff of psychology for taking LSD and doing things in the spiritual world. And right at the end of Aldous Huxley's life, as he was transitioning out, him and Richard Alpert got together, and they had talks and they influenced him. And finally, when Harvard said, "We want you out, we're firing you because you are expanding consciousness," he said, "No problem, I'm out." And then he went on to India, met his guru, wrote the book Be Here Now. He, Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, Aldous Huxley, they were in that energy of the Pluto-Uranus conjunction 65, 66. So things that this could represent this year. So Jupiter, Neptune in Pisces in 2022. Endings, closings, surrender, letting go, completion of things, allowing, accepting, forgiveness, crown chakra, multidimensional. Other words that you can put in there: magic, compassion, heart, love, shamanic. A lot of people are awakening to shamanic traditions. Plant medicines are exploding at this time. Profound, nature, spirit, garden of Eden, cosmic, beyond. I don't know what I meant to write there. Collective, probably. Collective. That's an error. What color? Eternal and collective awakening. These are all in the field. These are also in the field. These are also things associated with Jupiter and Pisces and Neptune in their disharmonic state. Fanaticism, control, fear, duality, falling deep into sleep and consciousness, delusion, addiction, the opiate crisis. Let's not even talk about the other one going on right now. That's of a magnitude of unbelievable proportion. People connected to addictive pharmaceuticals. Death is a huge possibility at this time. It could be metaphorical, metaphysical death, like death of the ego, or it could be death of a lot of physical things. Death, extinction events of our planet, death, extinction events of things around us, death, extinction events of people, chaos and unconsciousness. We're hoping that we choose these things. But both frequencies are available, and your free will is what grounds this or this. So when you wonder, me as a little individual, I can't control what's going on in the world. You can't control it, but you can heavily, I should say heavily, you influence the field. And then your beingness of putting out 100,000 photons as opposed to 20, you don't even have to say a word. And you can connect in quantum entanglement with somebody else. You don't have to convert, convince, and condemn people of things. Just be your light. And you will influence the field. Scientifically proven. This is the second biggest event. The axis of evolution. The moon's nodes are switching signs. You think, I don't know what the moon's nodes are. You do know what they are. They're the points where eclipses happen. Yesterday was an eclipse. The node is where the sun, the moon, and the earth align up. And when they're all in that point, that mystical point, there will be an eclipse, either a lunar or a solar eclipse. Formally, for the last 18.6 months, from 2020, May 2020 to January 2022, the nodes have been in Gemini and Sagittarius. They're switching into Taurus and Scorpio. January 18th is the switch date of 2022. They'll persist there until May 2023.
This is pretty significant.
This is very significant. The North
What was
Node,
the date?
this symbol,
Sorry, January 18th, 2022 to May.
I forgot to look up the exact date, sometime in May
Oh, that's
2023.
it.
That wasn't an error, that was just that I didn't put it in. So the North Node, and you can find this symbol in your own chart. And you can also look in your own chart where Taurus and Scorpio are. So this is going to tell you where you're going to be activated with the things we're about to talk about. The North Node is the point of evolution that the consciousness of spirit is guiding us to move towards. The Native Americans, some call it the Good Path Red Road. In the Mayan tradition, they call it the Sak Bay, the White Path. In the Taoist tradition, they call it walking
The way,
the way.
the Tao.
The Tao means the way. In the Buddhists, they call it the middle path. So it's where you want to evolve towards, where you're growing towards, where your higher self is calling you in. It's your Dharma. I'll explain Dharma.
I think soul's purpose is the quickest way to throw that one out there, but what you're here to do is, like referenced, you're the interbeings that have chosen this time. You have a specific gift unique to you that would really help at this time if it were released. That's your Dharma. That's what you're here for. That's why you chose this time.
So North Node is in the sign of Taurus. So we want to move towards high vibration Taurus principles. Evolve into those. Evolve, it's also unknown, meaning like the mental mind doesn't totally understand it, but you feel it at the soul level. And it's also new territory. So the North Node is where we're evolving towards. We haven't been here before. So part of it is trust and faith. It's going back to your, but I think we're empowered by that Jupiter, Pisces, Neptune energy, which is all about trust and faith, and it's high vibration. I trust we can do this. I have faith we can do this. So let's go for it. Let's go into the unknown. Let's not go back to the old structure. Let's not go back into fear and enslavement.
So the North Node in Taurus and the South Node in Scorpio, this axis shift that we're moving into is the collective. That means all of us will feel this together. However, your North Node and South Node axis maybe could possibly, I happen to have this axis in my chart, so I'm having a same time as everybody is doing it, so is mine. But yours might be Leo Aquarius, or it might be Cancer Capricorn. It's just need to take a look where you're at, and then know that whatever that, what we're talking about, North Node energy, this is in Taurus, but North Node in general is where your soul wants to go. So if you find where your North Node is in your chart, that sign that it's in is where your soul wants to head towards. Okay? And then when you look at that and find it, see what's influencing it, around it. Are there other planets right there that are helping with that? Because that means there's a whole lot of energy wanting you to move towards that way. Remember I said all the signs have an archetype. They have kind of a persona. So you can learn what that archetype is and then move towards that energy. And then simultaneously, on top of that layer is this collective, all of us together moving towards this Taurus node energy. So you're doing your individual one, and we're all doing this one together. We're currently until, what's the shift date?
January 18th.
18th. Until January 18th, we're still in Gemini North Node and Sagittarius South Node. We're all under that influence. So I give that as an example. Gemini North Node, for this last 18 months, Gemini is about communication and information. We have been all about either information or misinformation. Our televisions are communicating, our news feeds are communicating, our social media is communicating. That's where our collective evolution has been going towards, good or bad. And then the South Node has been in Sagittarius, which is truth. The South Node, which we'll get to in a minute, is about where your soul wants to leave things behind. It's time to cut, eclipse, cut it. All the false things, all the lies we've been telling ourselves, cut it, clip it. We have till January 18th. That's the energy we're in. Then we move on the 18th, and we're gonna focus on the North Node. We wanna go here. This is where collectively we all wanna go.
Health, Mother Earth, biodiversity of life, nature, the body, connecting to the five senses, the sacred, sensual, love and peace. These are all Taurus archetype principles. And these are harmonic, neutral, stabilized Taurus principles. Solutions, not problems. So Taurus focuses on solutions, not what's the problem, what's the solution. Connection, community and relationships, inclusion and kindness, being self-sufficient. Resources, so this includes food, agriculture, water, oil, Mother Earth, all the things that we use for our society. Taurus, in its harmonizing way, is about stability. It's the bull with all four legs on the ground, not one, not two. It's practical. So the solution, if it's not practical, it's likely not. It's Occam's razor. If it's complex, the simplest solution is probably the right one.
If I had to pick one of these that I say is the biggest focus for us as a collective, it's Earth. We need to focus on Earth. It is snowing in Hawaii.
And 80 in Denver. And sovereignty is a Taurus word, meaning you are in your own authority, you know your soul, you're able to stand up, you trust your own intuition. So South Node, this is what has gone on before. You could say literally before in your linear timeline of your life or before karmically past lives. This is the same for the planet. An example is, there are a number of astrologers and ancient traditions, our Mayan teachers have been telling us this or agreeing with this, that many of the people incarnated now were once in Atlantis, and Atlantis went through the same karmic things we did and messed it up. And so Mother Earth said, you're done. Boom, under. Because you've done too much destruction to everything else. You're not getting the karmic lessons, and so it's an etch-a-sketch redo. No more 10,000 chances. You've had a lot. And so we've been reincarnated now. We've gotten to a similar technological advancement as Atlantis. We have iPhones and things that are crazy. No one individual knows how they work. No one individual could make an iPhone, right? They're beyond the individual consciousness. Only the collective consciousness, I'm using that, it's funny, but only collective consciousness can produce that. No one person can make an iPhone. Or even a mouse for a computer. It's a collective understanding of things that is put together. And so these are magical devices that reflect our consciousness. The internet is a magical way of understanding our consciousness. No one individual controls it or understands it. It's our collective reflection. So we're at some place that is close energetically, not exactly in the particulars to where Atlantis was. Atlantis was at a precipice where the 1% had gotten the power. They had misused it. They were depleting the Earth's resources. They were ignoring the signs. They were suppressing and enslaving other people at the end of its reign. And it got to a point where the Earth was at a critical collapsing point, and it did. It's in all the ancient traditions that about 13,000 years ago, there was a great catastrophic event. It's not just the Bible. It's in New Zealand. It's in Australia. It's in Africa. The Greeks reference it. Plato wrote about it. It's in the Bible. It's in the Hebrew tradition. It's in South America. The Inuits in the North Pole. They all have just about the same story of a catastrophic event of the world falling away and most things dying. And it included water and then a subsequent extremely cold period and very hard times to survive. South Node is what we need to heal and where we've been and where the problems may be. Scorpio is the most intense of energies. Scorpio is what has been hidden, suppressed, controlled, dominated. And so I put the positive first because the South Node is not all bad. There can be hidden treasures there. It's things we didn't look at or consider. Meaningful interactions in Scorpio, heart to heart, eye to eye. Being in communication and close to people, seeing their faces is a Scorpio principle. Unmasked, literally and figuratively, is a Scorpio principle. You meaningfully connect to other human beings. That's the medicine for what might go awry here. It's the energy of creation and destruction, Scorpio is. So this is the one that makes us go a little... The South Node in the sign of creation and destruction could mean there could be a lot of destructive things happening. We didn't understand how we use some technology or power or thing, and it's coming back to say, boom, here's the consequences. Positive side, share. Scorpio is all about sharing and caring. Reach out to an individual who needs help. You see someone struggling in your local community area, you're afraid to reach out to them because you've been isolated, separated, don't know if you have the tools. It doesn't matter whether you have a degree or not. Go out and hug somebody and bring them in and give them some food. It's what the grandmothers and grandfathers would do. We need that. We've been afraid to share meals with each other. That's a sacred act. Heavy emotions are Scorpio things. It's not good or bad, but they're intense. They're one way, I hate this or I love this. We're seeing that come in right now. Scorpio is complicated, very complicated. It's the web and network and labyrinth of the mind. And so likely things could get very complicated during this time. Or go to Taurus. It's not that complicated. We need simple solutions. So if something's coming up that's extraordinarily complicated and doesn't make common sense, like I don't understand why it's this way here and not this way here and then different here, the complication is pointing to something that's karmic. It's not fitting well into the web of life. It also rules financial systems. Well, something that's coming down the pike, which maybe you're aware of or not, is a huge shift in finances. We're talking cryptocurrency. The World Bank seems to be preparing to do something. There's a consolidation of government and financial energies coming. It could go one way or the other. It could be great or it could be enslaving. Death, destruction, and conflict could be full of this year. Wars, eruptions, civil wars, cover-ups of a lot of things. Scorpio on the shadow side wants to hide everything. Hate is an out-of-balance Scorpio word. There's a lot of hate boiling right now. It also rules sexuality and sexual tension and also sacred sex. We could awaken and say, sexuality isn't really sacred. Resources of the world are also Scorpio. Who has them? Who uses them? Scorpio out of balance is those who are in power take all the resources. Consolidation of power. Could be good, could be bad. Energy, authority, soul and shadow realms, government corporations, anything that's huge institutions, pharmaceutical companies, banking institutions, they all fall under Scorpio. And if they do, something about them needs to evolve and change. So why do I go to eclipses here? Well, these points are where the eclipses will be, and eclipses are when the intensity of all these things are pulled forward. Here's the eclipse stage for 2022. They'll all happen in the sign of Taurus and Scorpio. This is how astrologers can predict when, and astronomers and NASA can predict eclipses. It has to do with where the nodes are located. April 30th, a Taurus new moon, it'll be a partial solar eclipse. Look at your chart. Where is Taurus? Where is that new moon going to sit? That's where that partial solar eclipse is going to affect you personally. May 15th, Scorpio full moon, total lunar eclipse. It'll also be T-square Saturn. Saturn, that's going to be an intense one. Again, intense is not bad or good. Intense just means it brings a lot of things that were once hidden to the foreground. October 25th, Scorpio new moon. It's a partial solar eclipse. It'll be conjunct Venus, Saturn, and Uranus. Could be very sweet. November 8th, Taurus full moon, total lunar eclipse. It's election day in the United States. while Mars is retrograde. Again, these will be emailed out to you. I know you want to write them down, but just know if you happen to miss it, you'll get it. The planet Uranus is in the, remember we talked about Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011 to 2024. Uranus is in the sign of Taurus from 2019 to 2026, 7 years. The sign, or the planet of revolution, remember Pluto, Uranus in the 60s. Uranus was revolution, evolution, lightning strikes, sudden changes. It's in the sign of Earth for 7 years. So this is also a big influencer in the field, and I think it's going to be coming forward in 2022 a lot more. This is the energy of sky. Uranus is the sky god in Greek, or Uranus is the proper Greek pronunciation. And Taurus is Earth. So it's Earth meets sky. This could be beautiful. It could be the harmonics of heaven and earth coming together. Taurus is, we just talked about it, finance, money, farming, minerals, materials, wealth, food, pharmacy, values, home, business, body, self-love, survival, security. Uranus is revolution, change, innovation, awakening, evolution, radical, new, global, technology, star beings.
And the North Node is going to be in Taurus too.
So Uranus is going to be influencing that North Node of where we want to go. So probably, just if we're talking energy frequencies, there will be sudden, unpredictable shifts of energy towards Taurus. What they are, I don't know. But because Uranus is there, Uranus is like lightning. Lightning is unpredictable. You can feel it in the field. It's like your hair stands up. You know it's around, but where and when is it going to hit? You don't know. And then it does. Boom. And Uranus's job is to reconcile two unreconcilable differences. That's lightning's job. There's a pressure buildup of electromagnetism between heaven and earth and sky, clouds and earth, and the lightning reconciles the difference between the polarities. One is positive and one is negative. Does that make sense? So this could be psychologically, this could be politically, this could be health, anything. But Uranus's job is sudden. Unpredictable means it's not random, but the human mind can't see the scope of it. Does that make sense? So Uranus and Taurus can be shock and awe. Many people found what happened in 2020 pretty shocking. Liberation and awakening, sudden shifts, instability, and it will affect currency, food, energy, innovations, technology. This is also a time, though, I always want to put, not that these are bad, shock and awe can awaken us to something, but this is a time to develop new relations with new people who have new consciousness and develop new talents, things that you have been afraid to bring forth. So many people come, not about our studio, but come here because they want to learn new things. They want to open up. They're like, I've been doing this job for years, but I feel like I could be a spiritual healer. Yeah, you could be. You have these talents. That's why you incarnated right now. The world has plenty of accountants, plenty of no offense if you're an accountant, we need good accountants. But you get the idea, there's a certain tracks of things that we think we're supposed to do. Like I'm supposed to be a doctor, an accountant, or this. We need those, but there are not that many energy healers, or not as many people who work in the shadow realms, or death doulas, or spiritual workers, or you name it.
And I think it can be a yes and.
Yeah.
I mean, I would want my accountant to be an energy healer. That would make things so much better when I go to visit. I would understand, it's a language that it would be relatable. So, add that into your mix. You don't have to give up your day job and become a Reiki master, but take Reiki to the office on the lunch breaks and heal people.
Doesn't have to be dual, right? So this is when Uranus will conjunct the North Node. It'll be July through October. So Uranus will bring all of this sudden change to that evolutionary forward-looking path. We just put it in there. It could have a lot of effect on the economy. It could collapse or be rebuilt or be rebirthed, but something dramatic could happen around there.
Whenever you see Uranus, it's drama.
Remember how we talked about evolutionary states? There's consensus reality and it's dominated by external authority and Saturn. Anytime Uranus is vibrating the field, any consciousness that is in consensus reality, this is disturbing to. If you're individuated, this is more comfortable. If you're in spiritualized, you don't even care about this. It's not relevant. You're not polarized by the duality. It just is. Does that make sense? So when you're wondering why some people are affected this way, why that way, why this, it's your evolutionary state, or another way to say it, the conscious state of where they're at. And so these different energies will have a different effect on different vibrational fields. It all goes back to quantum physics. Now we hit the United States. I know we're going over, we were about 15 minutes late to start, so it's 3 o'clock, and they used to go, it's okay. Probably go about 3:30 at latest. We're pretty much close to the caps here. The last one's not be a lot of talking. Pluto will switch signs into Aquarius in 2023, so next year. It's almost going to change energies, and then it'll be there for a long time, to the year 2044. Meaning, any child born during this time is a Pluto Aquarius. Their consciousness is rooted in Aquarian energy. Who was born here between 1970 and 1984? You all are Pluto Libras. You'll see it in your chart. Your Pluto's in Libra, and your consciousness is rooted in Libra. Who was born from 84 to 96? You're all Pluto Scorpios. Something about your evolution and soul incarnation has to do with Scorpio. Anybody here in the younger generation of 1996 to 2008? You're Pluto Sagittarius. Current babies are Pluto Capricorns until next year.
Yes, old people.
1957 to 1970 is Pluto Virgos. And anybody born before 57 to 1933 is a Pluto Leo. This can explain why different generations have different conscious ways of seeing the world. They're supposed to.
Pluto is generations.
We call them Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, baby boomers, greatest generation. Astrology assigns it by where Pluto was. And this can explain how generations can better harmonize, or why the perception is they're not. You know, it's like this next generation, they don't know how to do it right. They can't. But they're supposed to be doing something different. It's not good or bad. It's like this generation is tasked with observing what's going on to the east. This generation is tasked with what's going on to the south. And if you're in duality, one's like, it's south, it's east. Or you could be like, what's going on in the south? Oh, okay, what's going on in the east? Oh, okay, we can help each other. Does that make sense?
Can I say something on that one too?
Yeah.
I know we're running out of time, but just to exemplify that a little bit, Pluto Scorpios are the 30-somethings, say,
20s.
and lots of tattoos, lots of piercings. That's kind of a quantifier for that generation. Not that other generations don't have that, but that's a big one. And they're Scorpio ruled in their design. So they're about merging sexuality, transformation. That's why they put the tattoos on them. They're merging that energy into their body, and they're the ones that'll talk about their sexuality openly, and it's not like, let's get rid of the taboo of that. They're the ones that like to take the mask off of things, as he said, that in the South Node representation of Scorpio. And then he also mentioned, whenever something's out of balance, you want to go to the opposite end of that. So what I've noticed about that generation in particular, they're very earth-oriented. They want to be the next regenerative farmers. They're the ones that are making apothecary. They're the plant medicine. They're the ones that opened up the dispensaries. Mm-hmm. Like, how does a 35-year-old get to open up a dispensary? Mm-hmm. Well, they're Scorpio. They have finance on their side. That idea about it, the money management, they can do it. And they're going into plant medicine. The opposite of that, if they weren't going into that Taurus energy to help support their and they stay in their own just Scorpio-ness, that's that addictive behavior again. And so that's the other thing of that generation. There's a strong addictive personality in there. So you can that's just a snapshot of one of these to give an idea of how it works. You can look at your own and break it down the same way. And so you can look, like if you're a Pluto Libra, it seemed like the lion's share of you were, what's the opposite side of that? Aries. So you would look to Aries energy to help you. That's the fire starter, the innovator, the warrior, the one that stands up and says, do that. That's a really good energy to help support your soul's purpose if you're feeling out of balance.
Skip over a few things here. Okay, USA karmic reckoning. These are the exact dates that the birth chart of the United States will be activated, where Pluto will be exactly where it was when we were born on July 4th, 1776. It happens 3 times this year. Why 3? Because Pluto goes forward, retrogrades, and then goes forward. So it's going to hit the same point 3 times. Did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it?
So these are big dates.
Again, with astrology, not everything we know consciously happens on the date. It's a field of energy. But these are the exact markers when the bullseye of the field is right there. 27 degrees Capricorn. You can also look in your own chart. Where does the United States' birth chart affect your own chart? Wherever you find 27 degrees Capricorn in your own chart, this is where it's affecting you.
And to find numbers, there's 30 degrees in each sign. Because it's 360, right? And there's 12 signs. So each sign has 30 degrees. So 27, if you go find 27 Capricorn, it's going to be 3 off from the end.
So I know some of these slides are repeating things, but what is it that the United States has been tasked to do? Wherever Pluto is in a chart, whether it's for a country, a person, or the collective, the exact opposite sign that Pluto's in is what needs to be integrated and brought in. So if you're Pluto, like Katrina had just said, for Pluto Scorpios, they need Taurus energy to balance them. That's why they incarnated. They need Earth. They need to go simple. They need to be back to being kind and compassionate.
It's called the PPP in our astrology language, or the Pluto polarity point. So you want to always go to your PPP once you find your Pluto. That's your medicine.
So the United States was born in Capricorn, patriarchy, control, structures. Not good or bad per se. The United States has dominated the world since then, has controlled resources, military, money, finance, political ideology, media, films, pretty much world dominated. The structure of the world is dependent upon the US dollar. It's changing, but that has been the paradigm for the past 50 years. What it needs to bring in is Cancer energy, matriarchal, kindness to everyone, intuitive, peace-oriented, Mother Nature-oriented, inclusion-oriented, nurturing. We're going not that way at this time, I feel. Some of us are. This is the birth chart of the United States. I won't go through it, but you can just see. Here's Pluto. 27 degrees Capricorn. Here's the return date. There's Pluto on the return date. It's lining up. Here's its PPP. This is how you do it. It's over here in Cancer. And it's right on top of Mercury, which means communicate, share, create a new network, biodiversity, mushrooms. We'll cruise past this. This is just background in the field. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's where the collective wound is and your personal wound. It's been in Aries 2018 to 26. So everybody's having to look at, this is the positive side. Where can you be a pioneer? Where can you start new things? Where can we activate? Where can you stand up and be the warrior? Where can you assert yourself? Where can you find self-healing and be empowered? These are all positive words with Chiron and Aries: sovereignty, true to ourselves, autonomous, willpower, strength, internal authority. The negative side is enslavement, enslaved, controlled, external authority, no willpower, fear, no connection, or no belonging.
This is a huge opportunity for collective healing, for our individual traumas. Whatever we carry around as our wound, this is a time for everybody to be able to heal that. if we use our choice to do so. And part of when we say free will, your free will, your free will, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and revolt in the street. This is having consciousness of it. Just right now alone, even having this much information that maybe you didn't have before, has opened your will to it. Will it in. Want it. Call it in on a conscious level. That is a way that you can do that. That's using your free will. I want this energy. I am this energy. I'll take the steps to be more like that energy. And if you want to go protest in the street, that would probably be really helpful too. But it doesn't have to always look like that. I just want to point that out, that it's heart power. It's heart power.
And your evolutionary state will determine how you use your heart power, willpower. What does it look like? It has different subtleties at different evolutionary levels. There are 4 Mercury retrogrades. That's unusual. Usually there's 3. This year has 4. These are the dates. First one's in January, 14th to February. Second one's in May and June. Third is September to October, and then December and into 2023. There's a rhythm, so every few months there's a Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde, we're going quick here though. It's not bad or good, but it's where things have been out of alignment that need to be corrected. If you've been in alignment, there's no need to worry about correction. And so it doesn't have people like Mercury retrograde, don't do anything. It's a time, what has to do with retrogrades, to restore, relook at what tracks you've gone over. Like maybe you've lost something and you need to go back and figure out what it was, or you forgot, you need to go back. Like that's what the retrograde does. It slows down the speed of normal life so that you can reflect on things. Often it's done by technology, travel, and communication. Those are main things that will trip you up from going in your mundane reality. Flight canceled, sent the email to the wrong person. And then you have to go back and check your communication. Were you in integrity? Were you in truth? Was that something you should have said? No. Okay, well, Mercury retrograde checked you on it. These are all retrograde energies, and all the planets go retrograde. That's the almost last slide we have here. But anything that starts with RE is retrograde energy: restore, rejuvenate, renew, review, return, remember, reflect, regenerate, rejoice. That's a nice one. You get the idea. Cooked on phonics. So these are all the major outer planets retrograde. Pluto starts in April. All the outer planets retrograde every year, and it's not unusual. Actually, 5 months out of the year are usually laden with retrogrades. Neptune, June to December. Uranus, August into next year. Saturn, June to October. Jupiter, June to October. Chiron. Basically what you can see here is all of the summer into the fall is retrograde outer planets. It's been this way for a few years, and by the way, at least in my perception, the summers have been intense with energies.
So again, if you learn the archetype of what does Chiron mean, what does Jupiter mean, what does Saturn mean, etc., then when these hit these retrogrades, you can say, okay, if Jupiter is about the big expansion and the big teachings and faith, if we've been in integrity, we don't have to really freak out about a retrograde. We just use that time for reflection and basking in that kind of energy, in faith. Use that time to really dive into your spiritual practices. Go on a yoga retreat. Take that coursework you've been wanting to do that is with, some spiritual guru that has a great platform that you can work with.
I won't talk too much about this, but I just put a few notes. I'll send this out to you all. Basically, what I put here has to do with, we're in a time of instability for a while. Remember the Mayans and other people said 2012, 2025 could be unstable and unsettled. It's 2022. I feel that greater stability and frequency harmonization will come in closer to 2025. Doesn't mean that good things aren't happening now. Like our biggest energy of 2022 is that Jupiter, Pisces, Neptune. And we started with its spirituality, its nature, its community, its one love. And that's what we're believing and toning for. That's the frequency we're going to hold. But we want to put you aware that there are other ways that your free will could take that. So that if you see yourself going there, you know you have a choice to yoke it back to the other frequency. But collectively, it seems that the weather is going this way until 2025. What to do? What to do? Trust your intuition, always. Raise your vibration. Return to nature. Remember Katrina said one thing that we could tone from this year? Go back to the earth. That's it. You don't need somebody telling you what to do. If we all just loved Mother Earth with all of our hearts, we would instantly choose different things. You don't need an expert to tell you how to love Mother Earth. You will naturally choose better things for yourself and each other if you wholeheartedly love the earth. And that puts the sovereignty to you, not an expert, not a PhD, not a talking head. What do I need to do? Tell me, please, media. Love the earth. But how do I do that? Go out first and be in enjoyment. Oh my God, I love the stars. Let me take somebody else out and show them this tree I found. Like, you don't have to have a PhD or a degree to inspire passion in other people. And that inspired passion will make new solutions simple, positive, harmonious, I feel. Don't you? Don't you think when we all love the earth and you shared your love with each other, that's the positive side of that Scorpio South Node. Intimate connection. Hey, let's go mushroom hunting. Let's go over here. Let me teach you about the cycle of moss and how it grows on the tree. And did you know the trees are our lungs and we're cutting them down? If we just grew more trees, it would solve a lot of problems. It's pretty simple. And then there's complicated solutions, like in Dubai, they've spent $50 million on this machine that does what trees do to purify the air. That's complicated. Live with integrity. Intention is everything. Meaning, what is in your heart? You can make mistakes. We all do and we all will. But the intention behind what you chose and why matters. It's okay to make a mistake. You're going to do it. You might choose something off balance or do something that's not harmonious. But if your intention was pure, it has a way different karmic impact than if you had a different intention. Love each other, people. Rebuild community and clear your shadow. Easy to point out for somebody else's shadow. They are not doing this. They are doing this. What are you doing? Step into your rebirth. This is the year of the portal. These are some of the guides of people, well, Spirit being number one, Zach Bush, Patrick Moon, Rick Levine, Miguel and Hel Barbara, our Mayan teacher. These are all people, sources you can look up. We recommend them. They're also our teachers. Okay. I would open up it to questions in the field, but I know we've gone over. If you gotta go out of here. We have all of your registrations on email. We'll send this out as a PDF. Go ahead, share it with the whole world. Please. It's not, we want people to know these things and to get out there and then be your own advocate, like explain this to other people. And explain it in your own words. The astrologer said, no, what do you say?
On a survey question kind of way, we used to do kind of a quarterly astrology pre-COVID, similar to this, not a year in advance, but just break things down a little bit more. Would that be of interest if we brought that back to offer those up again?
Yes.
I think it's helpful if you get to know your chart really well. It's not all this kind of stuff we would do, like might break down how to read your chart or how to, those archetypes, learning what they are a little more intimately and what does it mean when two of them are coming together or going apart or that sort of thing. So that's good to know. We're a lot of yeses in there, so we'll try to put some of those together. Yeah, Robin.
Can you, when you designed the course, the quarterly course of what we're going to cover, suggest a book?
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Kind of
The bad part about that is, not the bad part, the books that go with this are really heavy. And so Michael reads them for us. I'm gonna take credit that I read them, because we have pillow talk and I get to download that one. But yes, we can definitely suggest some of these, but they're really heavy. And, like I'm asleep on chapter 1, page 1. And he's got it all, he just absorbs it like a sponge, as you can tell, he's really great at just retaining all that information and being able to spit it out. It's good.
Like I said, y'all can go, we'll take a few questions if they come up. Any questions from you?
I have a really random question that I just thought of. So the houses, the lower houses are more personal, the higher houses are more interpersonal. Is there any sort of like similarity of the inner and outer planets to that kind of duality?
Definitely.
The astrology wheel cut from the lower half to the upper half, it's a mirror. One's the personal and transpersonal, and so like Leo is the personal sign and Aquarius is the transpersonal sign. They both relate to each other, they're an axis. That is the axis of authenticity. Each opposite sign is an axis. The axis of Aries to Libra, the first sign of the native wheel, is the axis of personality. Taurus to Scorpio is the axis of survival.
What we're moving into on our next
Do we
shift.
survive or do we not? This is a big question put by the node shift.
I think what she's asking though is, do the planets coordinate in the same way? And if you remember, I said each of the houses has, or each of the signs has a planet assigned to it. So Mars lives in Aries, and Venus lives in Taurus, and Mercury lives in Gemini, and the moon lives in Cancer, et cetera, et cetera. So those planets are going to be the personal planets. They're also the ones closest to the sun. Our Mars is our internal warrior, and our Venus is how we love other people. And then the bigger outer planets are going to be like Neptune's in Pisces, and Uranus is in Aquarius. And who am I forgetting? Pluto's in Scorpio. Jupiter's in Sagittarius. Those bigger outer planets are in that upper, or the communal, or the collective energies.
Sure, thank you.
Is that what you?
Yeah, exactly.
So there is a coordination.
Yeah.
2 planets double dip on both sides of the wheel. Venus is in Taurus, but Venus is also in Libra, thank you. Mercury is in Gemini, and Mercury is also in Virgo.
There's a whole bunch of symmetries and geometries that simplify astrology. It's learning. Sometimes we teach the beginning courses. Yes, it can get very complicated, but the essence of astrology is very simple in its geometry and very simple in its principles. If that makes sense. So if you think that, I don't know if I could learn all this, the groundwork, the foundation, the base of it has a lot of simplicity to it. And then it's like cooking. You learn a couple spices, and then you learn when you put this spice with that spice, you know how they work. Done?
Yeah, we were talking about how the Earth has its own birth chart, and we're on the planet return.
Pluto.
So what is that kind of, and it's about the karma, right? Like checking in, did we do what we said? So is that the same thing if there's a solar return, like in your own birth chart?
Whatever every planet or luminary, meaning the sun and the moon, can have a return. Your birthday is your solar return. That's the technical term for it. Every year you have a solar return. And it's a check-in from the sun of, are you aligning with your most harmonic expression of your persona? And you're celebrated, of course you would. That's, you're incarnating as a soul, as that persona, and every year there's an honoring of it. Every month you have a lunar return.
Your moon touches where it was when you were born once a month. Find out your moon day on a month, and there'll be it's probably a really sensitive, emotional day.
Saturn returns every 29 and a half years. That's the most
That's a
common
big
age that
one.
I get astrology readings.
Your Saturn returns big. 58 is the next one. That's a big time. That's your karmic check-in. Saturn's karma. Saturn's karma. So when you turn 29, 30 years old, you're coming around the wheel again. You're having a check-in. Am I clearing the shiz that I need to get rid of in my life? Or am I going to take another lap around for 29 years and work on it? You know, and you want to get, as you're coming up to it, you want to get that cleared up. You want to get that, you know, like, I know what it is. You know what your patterns are that are detrimental to you. You know what they are. Clear them. And if you don't, make a plan and work on them as you go around. So America is coming up on its Pluto return, having a huge soul check-in on that date that we said on the July 4th, right? What did the Constitution want? As Michael said, people died for freedom. As we come around, the way I'm looking at it, we are giving away our freedoms so we don't die. This is what we're doing as we come back around. I don't know that I feel like that is a karmic clearing. And I'm talking about lots of freedoms. The Constitution is chock full of freedoms that were given to us and fought for and died for. And now as we're coming back around, we could go through that and check them off like, nope, 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 nope.
And you could remove the question of is that bad or good and just say, is this what you want?
Yeah.
Is this what we want personally as a collective? Then if it's not, but you feel like it's necessary, then we need to move in ways that change this so that the freedoms are reinstated and the crisis is solved. Or we create more problem, create more crisis, and create more entanglement. But the question is, do you want what's coming out? You're like, no, but we have to. Well, the answer is, either way, it's happening.
I feel like that was a revolution that happened. This is another revolution about to begin. And it doesn't have to be the same kind of revolution. We don't have to go to each other's throats for this. The big message that we're supposed to be getting in all of this is to do this with an open mind and an open heart. And to see everybody as equal as we do this.
These are the solutions right here. The North Node and Taurus. These are the solutions. Like, the chart is always pointing to the solutions.
This is what we'll be stepping into at the same time that we have this karmic return for our own country, the whole world, but our own country in particular will be having its Pluto return when the nodes are facing this. This is like, here you go, here's some answers of what you could do. The Constitution might be antiquated in some areas, but that doesn't mean throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can sit down and refine and revise a really beautiful Constitution that gave us where we're at today. I am so glad that I was born in America when I look around the world at some other countries, particularly as a woman. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose those freedoms. And I think we've kind of taken them for granted. I think we've kind of taken them for granted, and now they're in our face, like, how much do you like this? And a part that scares me is that there is a strong sense of delusion that they're not being messed with. They're being messed with. Your freedoms are being messed with. And so you have free will. And you chose this time to be here. You chose your parents. You chose your body. You chose your gender. And you might be, hell, did I choose my parents? Rumi has a quote, if you don't like the rug, how are you gonna get polished? And so when we have these adversities in our life that we don't like, things that we've karmically stepped into for a reason, your soul knew that if you used your will in the right way, you would polish and grind off those things that aren't serving you. And it would make you your shiny self, as luminous as you could possibly be. But sometimes we don't have the strength to do that. Sometimes we feel very weakened. I don't want to face that demon. But if we don't, it's going to be there when you come back in the next time. That's the way it goes. So why not do it get as far as you can in this existence, because you pick up where you left off. And I want to come in pretty clean each time, as clean as I can. I don't want to play chutes and ladders and take, 50 steps back because I'm a chicken shit. Or I'm arrogant. Or I'm selfish. I want to climb the ladder and get out, and then I want to reach down and help as many others up with me as I can. Get to the top of the mountain and pull everyone else up. Because we're all connected. There's no win. There's no winner at the top of the mountain. We just got to get there so that we're strong enough to pull the rest up. Sorry.
That's very
Sorry.
sorry.
All right, that concludes 2022. Good luck.
Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind. Earth, sky, and stars, 10,000 suns shine within us all. Give praise to the one. Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind. Earth, sky, and stars.